peace, and good. My name is Maximilian Maria Kolbe. But there was a place where they wanted to take my name away. There, I was no longer Father Maximilian. I was not a missionary. I was not a priest. I was not even simply a man. To them, I was a number, 16670. I had arrived at Auschwitz, and I carried with me something that nobody could take away from me. I belonged to the Immaculate. But let me go back a bit. In 1939, the war reached Poland. Niepokalanów, our city of the Immaculate, had been built to evangelize. Now something more had to be done. The doors had to be opened. We welcomed those who were fleeing. Christians, Jews, persecuted men and women who needed a place to take refuge. The war could change our printing presses, our projects, and our lives, but it could not change the gospel. Because when Christ puts a suffering brother in front of you, you can no longer ask him where he comes from. You can only ask yourself, what can I do for him? Finally, I was arrested. In May 1941, I arrived at Auschwitz. They took away my habit. They dressed me as a prisoner, and they gave me that number, 16670. There was hunger, beatings, humiliations, fear. But even there, I continued to be a priest. They could take away my habit, but they could not take away my priesthood. I listened to confessions when possible. We prayed. I tried to console. We shared the little we had. In the midst of a place built to convince man that he was worth nothing, we had to keep reminding that each person is worth the blood of Christ. One day, a prisoner escaped. As retaliation, 10 men were chosen to die of hunger. I was there. I listened to the numbers. I saw the faces. Until one of the chosen men began to cry. He was thinking of his wife, of his children. His name was Franciszek Gajowniczek. Then I understood that I had to do something. I left my row and walked towards the commander. The officer looked at me in surprise. "What does this Polish pig want?" I replied. "I am a Catholic priest." And pointing to the condemned man, I asked, "I want to die in his place. He has a wife and children." There was silence. I waited. Finally, he accepted. Franciszek returned to the line, and I took his place. I didn't do that because I wanted to die. I loved life. But in front of me was a brother who wanted to live, and I understood that love was asking me to step forward. They took us to the hunger bunker. There were 10 of us. There was nothing I could offer those men. I had no bread. I had no medicine. I couldn't open that door. But I could still do one thing. I could help them look towards God. So we prayed. We sang. We talked about hope. And little by little my brothers began to leave. Days went by. I continued to be alive. Finally, on August 14th, 1941, they decided to end me with a lethal injection. And then, I remembered those 2 crowns. Do you remember little Raimundo? The Immaculate One wore a white crown, and another red one. And that boy had responded, "I want both." The white one had accompanied my whole life, to belong entirely to God through the Immaculate One. Now I understood the red one. Martyrdom was not simply about dying. It was about what Jesus had taught. No one has greater love than the one who lays down his life for his friends. The red crown was to love to the extreme. But listen carefully to this. Auschwitz did not teach me to give up my life. There, the moment came to give up all at once what I had tried to give every day. My will, my projects, my strength, my priesthood, my life. I had placed everything in the hands of the Immaculate so that she could give it to Jesus. That is why, when that moment came, there was only one thing left to offer: myself. Maybe you will never have to give your life the way I did, but every day you will find opportunities to give it. When you forgive, when you serve, when you give up your comfort for someone, when you defend a person's dignity, when you stay with someone everyone has abandoned, when you love without asking, "What's in it for me?" You don't need to seek a red crown. Seek to love. And let God decide how far He wants to take your love. Immaculate Mother, you received my life and brought it to Jesus. Receive ours as well. Teach us to have a pure heart, to recognize Christ in every brother, and not to be afraid to love when love costs. May our life not belong only to us. Make us capable of giving it every day, until we also learn from your Son to love to the extreme. Amen. A white crown, a red crown. When I was a child, I said, I want both. Many years later, in Auschwitz, the men wrote a number about me, 16670. But that number could never say who I was. My name was Maximilian Maria. I was a Franciscan. Today, I am a martyr of charity.